It is 4:51. Call the meeting of the David T. Howard Go Team to order. Principal Hollis. That's weird.
Does somebody else have a microphone on?
No.
No.
Keep going. That's not what it was.
Okay. Mr. Brooks,
Present.
do you prefer doctor or miss?
My name is Dr. Malik, so just that's if you're looking for
Dr.
formal.
Malik. And me, Dr. Bryant,
I'm present.
Miss Nolan,
Here. Present.
Miss Moore,
Present.
Mr. Baker,
Present.
Mr. Anglin,
Present.
and is it Dr. Patel?
You can say doctor or miss, it's fine.
All right. We have a quorum and are ready to get started. I'll take, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda? If not, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and approval of the September 19th, 2024 meeting minutes. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Who wants a second?
All those,
Got it, England.
all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved, and we are ready for public comment.
There's no one present here. Did anybody sign up? I don't think.
No, we don't pass out the Zoom when it's a live meeting.
She's gonna check. They share it with the public comment.
It's a form.
Sign up.
There is one, no.
No public comment, sign up.
When was the last meeting?
The last meeting was September 19th.
Okay, yeah. It was from September 19th.
Okay. All right, we'll move right into discussion items. And we'll get started with the strategic plan. And so I hope everybody has taken a look at it. It's online. It's probably in some of these materials that Principal Hollis provided to us as well. Bless you. It's not- It is, it's on page.
Yeah, it is. I was telling myself that I was pressing the wrong button.
All right, and today, as a part of our meeting, we need to review it and get into the CIP deep dive and the needs assessment and goals, making sure our SMART goals line up and making any updates that are necessary. All right.
Well, you pretty much said that. So this is what we're doing from now until December. Yeah, let's look through. The strategic plan is in front of you. And looking through the lens that something may need to be adjusted, I will go ahead and let you know that I believe SMART goal needs to be adjusted just because we don't get the BAS 3 screener anymore, and that's one of the goals at the top. And then everything is in terms of 23-24 school year. So thinking about how we want to move it forward to reflect the current school year we're in. So all of the goals are either past tense or not relevant anymore. So just keep that in mind when we're about to go through the math data. We've already gone through the other data in the last meeting in September. So the only thing that I am updating specifically is the math data.
Principal Hollis, I have a
Yes.
question.
Of
Are we
course.
doing anything else to look at behavior? Like what, has something replaced it's called BAS screener?
So that wasn't really just about behavior, it's about the emotional status of the student. And so it was looking at emotional and behavioral, and it was taking a survey from the students, a survey from the parents about the student, and a survey from the teacher about the student, and trying to determine, and I think more so it was out of the vein of the pandemic, the isolation, coming back in, how elevated where we felt or where they felt they were. We're no longer doing a school-wide screener. We are doing individual things as the need arises. So we won't have school-wide data to look at as it relates to this anymore. I think that answered.
Yes.
Was that data presented? Because that was past tense, did last school year, they looked at it at May 2024 before the end of the school year was done?
No, because we did not have a screener for the May. We did look at it for the fall.
Okay,
That was
great.
the last time we had one, and the data was never extremely high anyway, but it did improve from the spring of the year prior. Oh, okay. I didn't know if somebody else had a question. All right, so just reminding us of what the SIP goals were, and we'll go into that later, but this is what we looked at last time. So you have it with you, looking at the math data, which was released on September 30th from the state. Trying to remember the exact date, because I think that's the last, yeah. And so this is how the school has performed, trend data versus the district. Overall percent proficient and above. So we're at 62.5% proficient and above for all grade levels. This does not include Algebra 1. This is end of grade assessments only.
So it's the end of last year is what we're looking at. The testing that came.
Yes, so this is the data point that we're looking at, and it is a 0.1% behind what we were pre-pandemic 2019.
For proficient and above?
Or proficient and above.
Mhm.
And if you do recall, the district was not asking us to look at proficient and above in 2019. We were looking at developing above in 2019. And this is, I don't know how to remove, say hide that maybe, okay. So this is the data broken down by grade. And then of course the top is the district data.
In the 8th grade data, that includes both algebra students and
No.
it only includes,
8th grade milestones data.
so the students who are taking algebra no longer have to take both algebra and 8th grade milestones?
No, this is ELG data. Milestones is ELC. I mean, algebra is ELC.
Okay, I'm sorry, the 10th graders took both of them 2 years
They
ago.
do still have to take both of them, and they did. This is in the grade data is not combined with end of course data.
Okay, I guess I don't understand the difference.
So,
But it's
so
still- it's
end
all
of
the-
course
So
data is the high
is it-
school test. High high school test count traditionally, except for when they were just going through new standards, is 20% of the grade. It is not lumped in as a part of end of grade data. End of grade data is done 3 through 8.
But it's every eighth grader, every seventh grader, and every sixth grader who take milestones, take math, right?
Correct.
That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
But but it still does not include algebra end of course data.
No, that's not what I was asking. I was just asking if that N is all of the eighth graders.
All of the eighth graders, yes, taking
Taking the
end
math
of
course.
end of grade, eighth grade math.
Taking
Yes.
math.
Yes.
Okay.
And they all did take end of grade, eighth grade math, even if they were in
They have
algebra.
to.
Right,
That's
that's
what I was
Now
saying.
we're all,
Okay.
okay.
You have to take end of grade. If you take algebra 1, you have to, in addition, take end of course.
I knew that. I was just making sure. Okay,
I was just
okay. I didn't know if everybody knew that, so that's why I said it.
I did not, so. Prepare my
Okay,
eighth
all right, here we
graders
go.
for this
It makes
extra
you
test.
really popular.
Couple extra ones.
I'm sure your student knows because
Oh, yeah.
the teachers have talked
So we can look at cohorts. What have you seen with cohorts of data when you look at that?
So the state does not necessarily want us to compare, but I know that human nature says that we're going to. They don't want you to compare because the prior year's standards were different.
Okay.
And there were standards from higher grade levels dropped into lower grade levels.
Right.
And so actually it was a harder version of math that the kids had to start taking last year. As far as cohort to cohort, so the students from 23 taking the test in 24, we don't have fifth grade data, so I can't legitimately compare. Only for seventh and eighth can I do a cohort analysis for it. But if you're going 23 from seventh grade to 24 from eighth, the students still perform better if we're looking at proficient and above.
Yeah, we think they're more moved into distinguished in the eighth grade.
And what percentage of students take algebra?
About a third. It varies year to year.
Okay.
And they all don't score distinguished on eighth grade.
The algebra students,
No, they don't.
I can imagine.
This is the data disaggregated by race.
Just overall across the whole school, not by grade, right? That's what we're
Correct.
looking at? Okay. And last year, the changes that we had were
Well, we did also have
Standards.
40 new teachers.
right, 40 new teachers. I'm thinking about, we have 40 new teachers, so new leadership
New
at the
standards.
district, new standards, teaching of the new standards to the professional learning that happened.
A
then
change in leadership in
curriculum.
the middle of the year. And we changed the curriculum
Curriculum.
we were using in the middle of the year, yes.
So
So despite all
all
of those
that.
changes, or in spite of, I'm not gonna say despite, in spite of.
I think a lot
all
of those were
changes.
helpful. Seems like a lot of them were.
And like I said, with more rigorous standards, the students still perform well. And I would also, except for in multiracial, and Hispanic, like we improved in every year, like from 23 to 23 to 23, 24 in every ethnicity except multiracial. And then if we do 3-year trend, we still fared better in proficient and above in every racial group except Hispanic and multiracial.
And our SMART goal doesn't include ESOL, is that right? No, it doesn't. Okay.
It did not because we just got this data released
Yeah,
September
I was just
30th.
looking from previous years.
You know, that was not as much of, I can't focus on everything. But our biggest gaps at that time were the ones that we're focused on.
The Black subgroup.
I mean, because when you look at ethnicity, Black is the lowest performing. And then when you go to the other subgroups that I'm gonna keep clicking through, special ed is the lowest.
I just want
So, EL, now I do want to give this like asterisk, like we're looking at 35 to 40 kids overall in the school. And the subgroup changes every year, right? So it's not the same 35 kids every year. It does not discount how poorly this.
Right.
But we also spoke about in August, the attendance rate for this subgroup as well. And if you don't come and you're learning a new language, you're not gonna perform as well. So attendance dropped that past year, which we're trending positively in that space as well now, but just wanted to give some points. And then we did have a new ESOL teacher last year as well. Not that it's just a teacher. Okay. This subgroup is for special ed. Again, while it's not great data, I'm very proud of the work that was done by the team to have a 6% percentage point change. And Ms. Moore, or one of the teachers sitting beside me, I think that in math, we had all new special ed co-taught teachers, like the special ed math teachers in each grade level for math were new last year to the school. And so we were still able to do a 6 percentage point increase in proficient and above, working really hard. And then economically disadvantaged, as you can see here, is almost 9% increase in that category, which is also a hot button topic, of course, here. And from what I can tell, that's the highest it's been in more than a 3-year trend. So, of course, the subgroups that we're pointing out all had attendance issues last year that we are being very specific in how we're addressing those this year. So we hope to make even more growth, but I do think that this is trending in the right direction.
Can I just ask, does the English language learner, that severe drop, does that concern us in any other major way other than we wish we could get kids here? And, it just seems like such an anomaly to some of the other growth.
It is an anomaly. Like I said, we did have a new teacher, and the subgroup changes every year, like transientness.
Is the volume changing
No,
significantly?
then you're looking still at for the subgroup 35. Yeah, and so when you look at overall numbers, is not as large, so you don't see it affect the overall number. But when you look at that subgroup, one person, 2 people not doing proficient or distinguished is going to make a difference. It's going to drop dramatically, and we did see that in their data.
Can you look at this data by transient, like percentage of stability within the school? Like how many days they were 10%, they were here the year, or 20, 30?
So that's a maybe. I can ask. The only reason why I say it's a maybe because
I know they talked about that
not
at the
all of the
district.
data that we're looking at right now, this is looking at who took the test. Because it's coming from our data pool from the district. But if they weren't here to qualify for enough time from the state, then they don't qualify for what goes to the state on the state data. So we can see whether or not they passed, or when we say pass, made proficient or above. But if they weren't in school for enough registered, not in school, registered for enough days, then they don't count against us at the state level.
Okay.
But if they were registered enough days, then they do. But this is just everybody.
Do you know what level that is? Like how many?
Because we're talking about 35 kids. No, I don't
Okay.
know.
Mhm.
So y'all have already been doing some notices and wonders. But if you have any additional ones, as it relates to this data, I will say this, the students perform better, and I don't know if you recall me saying that, at the last minute, they perform better on the state test than they did on that.
What's the best predictor? Is it winter still? Or they say it's winter, or is it spring, or what's strongest forward?
We felt like spring was the strongest, because winter is right before the holiday break. The 2 weeks holiday break, and it's right after the Thanksgiving week. So they're not quite back into the flow of school when we're saying, hey, welcome back, now take this test, right? So we did see movement. I would say the winter probably was better for ELA as a predictor, and spring was better for math.
Okay.
Now, again, we did change curricular focus resources in October, beginning of November last year in math. And so that could be why that winter data point did not reflect what was happening as much. But when I look at the prior year, so 2 years ago, winter still dropped. So I don't really know that winter gives us as much bang as everybody wants us to have for winter. But it does give us some focus areas as instructional teachers like to think about, okay, let's not forget this standard, or let's not forget, this skill, but it's not as great of a predictor as we think, in my personal opinion.
And do you anticipate that the district will be using the winter map fifth grade data as one of the
Yes.
points for accelerated math again for rising sixth graders?
Yes.
Okay, I know there was some.
I'm not sure as of right now, there's been no indication that it is going to be different. I would say to parents to emphasize both, because if we trend the way that it has trended, both count. We'll see if that changes. I know there's been discussion in the past of, do we continue to do 3 tests, but that nothing has changed in any communication I've had so far. But with the high school test last year, they shifted mid-year as to which grade levels have to take all 3, and which can take 2, and which has to take 1. I mean, so anything's possible in Atlanta Public Schools.
So it sounds like, our subgroups are,
And I do want to apologize for why you're thinking of how you want to do that question. In all the other things, I did forget to add the algebra data, but I can give it to you and then update the slide when I get ready to post it to the website. we had 92% distinguished for Algebra 1.
Say it again.
Yes, 92% distinguished,
Y'all better work.
7% proficient. So
Seven.
99% proficient and above. 7.
7% were
Proficient.
proficient.
Mhm.
And that's the algebra test that is
EOC,
given.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a portion of eighth graders take that test,
A third.
a third of them, okay.
But it's also the test that ninth graders take if they
Correct.
take algebra.
yeah, on level.
Yes.
So with the new standards, that eighth grade class that's called eighth grade plus,
Enhanced?
I think,
We don't offer that class.
okay, so we're still not offering that class?
Correct.
Okay.
No.
Perfect, okay.
We have enough
Things.
separations. We don't want to add any more.
Do you know what the district performance looks like for algebra?
For algebra, yes. It was 13% distinguished and 22% proficient.
That's nuts.
That's
Yeah,
all algebra for the whole district,
That's
Yes.
the whole-
including ninth grade.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
ninth graders.
Eighth, well, there's
Yes.
eighth and
Eighth
ninth
and
graders.
Yeah,
that
that's
includes,
right.
that includes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
it does include our 92%.
Yes,
We're
that's
pulling it
nuts.
up.
We're trying to
We're
help
trying.
everybody.
We're spreading the love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Outlier.
Yeah, but I was very, very proud of the Algebra 1 team
Excellent.
because all 3 of them were new to teaching Algebra 1 at Howard.
Mhm.
Actually, all 3 of them were new to teaching Algebra 1, period. One of the 3 taught high school math, but taught geometry.
Mhm.
So just want to shout out my math team.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, that's nuts.
So the progression will be eighth graders taking, if they didn't take algebra last year, they take it then at Midtown.
Yes.
Okay.
Which they did well too, but yeah, not here to lift. Midtown.
I believe they
Today.
shared that at their go-to meeting.
Yes, they probably did. So I will add that to the slide deck. Any other questions about math?
And how did that change over time the year before? Did we have?
Much higher.
Yes, we've never hit 92%.
Right.
distinguished. I
There
just
you go.
wanted to
Without
go
that
ahead and
asterisk.
say that again.
Right.
The previous year was 74 and then 78.
Oh,
Fabulous. And those standards stayed the same?
No,
No,
they
those-
got
No
new
standard
standards last
station.
year.
The algebra ones, though, also changed.
Every math
Every math,
standard
okay.
in the state changed.
There's no way to inject science or math into how we break down the data since APS changes the elements that they do every year.
Well, that's the state.
The state does
That's
that.
who, we all vote and elect to
Correct.
legislation. And I'm going to leave that there. It's not quite the climate for us to discuss that part, but I am updating the slide deck as we speak. So once it goes live, you'll be able to look at the historic data for Algebra 1 for us, but it has the other contents for high school.
Out of curiosity, for that data point, is there a way to pull our numbers away from the district to see what kind of true comparison is, or is it just kind of lumped all together?
No, that's what our school data, that's what I gave the
Does
92.
our school data go into the overall district?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a
I
way,
gave
is there a
both.
way to separate?
To like
So
see
to
how
see
the
how the
district-
How the
district-
Minus
district will do
Howard.
without it.
Yeah.
minus Howard.
You can see they put up a blog on APS Insights that has all the milestone data, math and ELA, and it gives you all of the districts. And you
I
can
don't
kind of-
think that's what he's asking. He's asking, is there a way for us to
How
see
would
it
take
without
that?
Howard?
We
So
were
we
not-
see
Yes.
See the rest
all
of
of
the
How many
APS
calculated
without Howard.
versus-
You can download the spreadsheet.
Right.
I love your honesty.
My
That's
last
why we
math
have you
class
here
was
for
a theory
social
of math
studies.
18 years ago.
Do we have any other questions on math, or do we want to transition to how we're gonna adjust the strategic plan?
No, I don't have any other questions. I'm concerned about the kids that are.
All right, so
Yeah.
just so you can have background information, we talked about this already, so we did not add the math information here from ELC. Notice that we kind of shifted from ELG to MAP on all of our goal statements, because when we shift to new ELA standards next school year, it's gonna be the same lag delay in when we get the data, so we wouldn't be able to evaluate our effectiveness for that year until September. So we shifted to using MAP as our evaluative piece. The opportunities and challenges, as you can see here, the attendance rate was pretty low for the groups that we discussed, or actually the percentage of time that they were out that exceeded 90% was high. So we want that to be low. Yeah, this gets tricky how you say it. But as you
So-
can see, they are all high.
So that means they were out. So for the English language, they were out 36%.
36% of them were out more than, were at school less than 90% of the time.
Gotcha.
Yay, I'm so okay, that shows you we got
I'm learning
audience in the
math.
balcony meeting. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry. It's a lot of people that can't answer that question.
That versus like chronic absenteeism. That is.
Right, it does lend itself to, and we use our whole child intervention team to look at the students individually, but the data is the data.
So we gotta figure out how to get kids to school.
Yes.
And on time would be great.
Yeah. One step at a time.
Start it.
Yeah.
I mean, and if I'm being quite frank, staying the entire day.
That part too.
I mean, there's a sixth grade team that checks their child out every day.
What does your attendance team look like to help with chronic absenteeism and?
Well,
what do you
we've
guys do?
improved since then. The attendance team consists of course, the front office. They're awesome and amazing. Our social worker, counselors, Ms. Moore, Mr. Griffith, Dr. Dubois is on there, and Ms. Hudson.
What have they found are
And
the greatest barriers?
Assistant
Ooh, it's a lot.
Like top three.
You know, if I'm candid, please don't ask anybody listen to this part of the video. I think that inner city doesn't value the add of what the teacher can do in the classroom space. And I say that because when you look at our attendance data versus suburbia attendance data, like my child's school, we take our kids to school. We don't pull them out. I mean, so it's a major disparity between, like, you get excited because the middle school's, attendance rate is in the 70s. It's unheard of if you go and look at higher performing suburban schools. And so I think it's an adult issue, to be quite frank, if you're talking about a 13 or 14-year-old. Every once in a while, it is anxiety about coming. That is not the norm. Is, do I value being in the seat? And, they'll call some parents and like, oh, he missed the bus. I'll tell him to come now. Well, you've missed hours at the school. So it is an adult issue. I mean, in Takesha's opinion. I mean, but we are doing incentives, we are doing calls, and the district has this year purchased a new system or partnership where parents are getting letters home and text messages. I'm not sure. if you've
I get the
gotten them.
letters, I got a letter.
Yes, yes. So that is an addition this year that hadn't been done in previous years, and it's a third party. But we even, when we can, use our permanent subs to make personalized calls home this year, when we notice that the students aren't coming. So
And they said when they rolled out that platform, that electronic platform, that it was going to be interactive. I haven't seen the other end of that, that you were going to be able to click, like, why didn't you come to school? Because the bus didn't pick me up, or I missed the bus. Are you getting any data back from that?
I was told that I should have a login. I have not received said login at this point.
Okay, because that was it was a investment from
was.
a large investment from the district, and it was to be an intervention model, and it was to be interactive and to provide data so that a lot of the staff didn't have to do some of these things.
I will say my social worker says that the data is really good. I just have not.
So she has access?
She does.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So it is interactive at least some.
Sure. All right. So this is just what we saw as our needs or issues, right? Took our needs, and then we came up with the problem statements, and that's how we moved to what those SMART goals are that we shared. And you can look through this because, it's a lot of words. Our action steps that we are taking is focusing on the writing skills, of course. Protected time for professional learning. We're using PLC Plus and Visible Learning as our vehicles for enhancing capacity of teachers into best practices, instructional strategies. Meet the students where they are, and then making sure we do quick writes and looking at level text for our students who are our subgroups. We have the intervention block, which is what we've done last year. We saw that to be another change to your point. If, you were here 3 years ago, it was that, what is that called? Enrichment, or in the morning, something beyond the day. I don't know what they call it.
Proficiency and beyond was what it was.
Yeah, in the morning, and it looked like the mall around here until instruction time started at was it 10:15, 10:20?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And so we took that away last year too, and added the intervention blocks, and the intervention block has a grade associated with, am I doing what I need to do? Am I learning how to read? Am I learning how to do the math? So versus what was being done before, it was no grade. So.
And kids are cued on that based on a percentile?
Math. Math percentile being in the bottom percentile.
Bottom quartile, or is there a marker? Or it kind of depends?
Around
There's a
there.
band. Okay.
Around there.
And it's just for ELA literacy. Okay.
Well, and for math too.
Okay.
And trying to increase student voice and academic discourse. We do the same thing for math. Yep, the same is true for math. And then for home child, PBIS, even though the hurricane stopped our first PBIS event, but it's coming up this month. We added last year ISS, which we didn't have it 2 years ago. It did bring our out of school suspension data down. Okay. If you recall, last year, our SIP goal was around suspension. And so that's really not an issue now. And so we shifted that. from being our SIP goal to focusing on attendance. Because if we can get them here, we can improve their understanding and mastery in the content. And we do incentivize attendance using the monies that the district has given us. So we're really honing in on professional development about climate, culture, sense of belonging at the school. And I do feel like that is part of what is helping the attendance rates to come up. And we're trying to figure out how to get this group counseling in, but we do have restorative conversations between parties that have disagreements.
The literacy, did they say that they were changing the PL day for the 14th and adding a middle school literacy component on Monday night?
What?
Sorry, was that a?
We don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The board meeting was Monday night and they're,
Monday's PL day was supposed to be a district-based PL day. And on Wednesday, it was gifted back to the schools.
Professional learning day.
Yeah.
No, her face was saying like 2 days ago, 3 days ago. that's
Yesterday?
what- Yes, yes.
they were talking about, over the last year, they rolled out the Readers for Leaders, which came here and spoke to us. And they, based on the.
That's
bill,
a K-5.
Right, and then they talked about expanding that to middle school.
They did talk about
They
expanding
mentioned
it.
it last night.
And they were trying to make us take an extra map assessment with fluency. And so the middle school principals pushed back on that, and so they rolled that back. That's about all I got.
It sounds like it, because literacy was, as the district was presented last night in the goals and guardrails, and they mentioned that they are formulating that with Dr. Butler.
They are formulating it.
And I thought they mentioned something about the PL day, but
The PL day does have components in it.
okay.
The second half of the day is optional, even though we opted into what the district has created for the second half of the day. I don't recall it being, it has a literacy framework. I do not recall that it is something that's heavy in readers or leaders.
No, it was,
Yeah, I mean,
It's small
The
group
same-
instruction
yeah.
and it is data.
yeah, I didn't feel like it had a readers or leaders
tone.
vibe, no.
know,
But I
'cause we
do
just
know
went
that
through
they
the
are
register,
trying
so.
to, yeah, I know, because we've been
Nice.
pushing you all to register for it because we were just gifted it back on Wednesday. So I want to keep saying that. So I don't know if they plan to tie in readers or leaders in some kind of capacity. We can't really speak to that because she would have to go through the training, but the title does not lend itself to us to seem as though it is in the vein of readers or leaders. But I do know the fluency piece was being pushed out heavily. It was pulled back, and Dr. Johnson and I can't think of her
Butler?
name right now. Yes, Dr. Butler, who's our new superintendent, assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. They are working to figure out what
Middle school
looks
literacy
like.
looks like, okay.
Which, I think with the new standards was going to shift anyway.
I'm glad you guys were gifted back that day. I know that was a big ask last year for more PL time in the school, so.
Well,
No, it's not really good.
This
I'm
isn't
gonna
the
be
way you
quiet
want
on
it. You
that.
want it.
Yeah, thank you.
On to the next
Probably
slide.
more.
On to
Don't
the
say,
next
yeah.
slide.
Okay. Next slide. Yeah. So this is asking us to compare our SIP goals. If you want to turn to the page that hits the SIP goals that I added right after, like you're looking front, is it front, back?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not front back, but they're next to each other. The middle column is the SIP goals, and then you have across the top what our strategic goals are, and is asking us to consider what should be added or changed when we compare our SIP goals to our strategic plan. Looking at the goals. And if I had to assume, if we're doing this over like the next couple of meetings, we might want to target goals and then look at priorities next, once we figure out the goals. And so I'm going to type in here whatever y'all say.
So we're looking at SIP, to update SIP or
No,
not?
you can't update it. You're
It's not.
updating your strategic plan, goals, and or priorities.
So the SMART goals at the top. of the
Mhm.
strategic
Okay,
plan.
I guess I was
Sorry.
confused.
So our SIP goals are our SIP goals in the middle.
But it's asking, are these goals reflected in
Are they gonna lead to
the strategic goals for the school?
that?
And I would say in general, yes, and then
in
no.
specific, like
Yeah.
fast. So that's the one of the ones that we need to update.
So we need to take out that one altogether, right?
Mhm.
And then definitely update the dates, but we're trying for a 5% increase rather than a 3% increase.
Well, that was asked for us to do over 2 years. And so 5% over 2 years seems reasonable. That's why it was 5 versus 3. So I'm just going to, you said remove
The
goal.
BAS.
Is there anything you want to add for mental health? Somebody asked that before, right?
We don't have another,
Screener.
we don't have.
We have any way to
don't-
measure data.
We don't have a school-wide screener. We have, if there is an issue, a threat assessment and a screener for that issue, specifically for that specific child, but not something every child
So we'd
takes.
be able to measure from year to year.
So what other data points do we have from students? We have there's a state. Do you have, what is that one? Do you have a adult at the school that you trust? Do you have, it's like that sort of a survey?
Mhm.
That we could look at that.
You're talking about
Georgia,
climate
Climate, yeah.
survey.
Yeah. That's the,
I mean,
That is
you
more
have
good.
that, but I mean, what's up, y'all?
so that is a piece of information that gives us feedback directly from students.
I'm not.
Yes, the students take it, the staff takes it, and the parents have an opportunity to take it. Then
Is it
we'll be
only
sending out
once a
that
year?
link. It is once a year.
So we won't have anything to.
You can't do
This year,
pre-post with that,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
And the 8th graders
like
are
my
gone and the
statistics every
6th graders are new, so it's not, I mean, especially with middle school, how quickly they exit out in
Mhm.
comparison to elementary and high. I don't really know if it's an apples to apples comparison. And then that is how I feel that day.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah.
not just that day, that moment in that day,
And then how I feel next year, that day.
in that moment.
Oh. I do think mental health is a
I just don't know how you measure it.
That's, I was just throwing out like
Yeah.
where do we gather actual data?
Data.
I think
That's
that is,
relevant.
what I can't think of anything else.
I mean, because the equity survey does not speak to mental health. And then,
We don't know what's going to be ever on that, correct, from year to year?
um,
The AMP up?
I feel like the AMP up is pretty consistent. The first part of it is pretty consistent with the questions, and then it's like the add-on questions that change. Like the first year, I feel like we did it. I'm gonna look at Dr. Brian at England. It was like 12, 13 questions, and then the next year was like 25.
Mhm.
You mean for staff or for
Yes.
students?
Well, or I want to say at least staff and parents.
But staff has Gallup, right? You could use Gallup data for staff. That's every year. that compares to overtime
And we
So everybody's
actually
standard.
take it multiple times,
too, yeah. So if we're
but that
looking at
doesn't help
stuff-
us with
This is just
Just-
students.
Right.
emotional well-being.
We can think about it if we think of
I can't think
something.
of any other.
That
first one, do we want to add English learners?
I think you guys were saying it was tough because of the transients and
In the small number, in the
Yeah.
subgroup, I don't think you shouldn't. I don't really, if I'm recalling the data from the last meeting, I don't feel like it's needed in both ELA and math, but it's definitely needed in math.
I hate to say that, but I think in ELA, we lagged the district in ELs on that. So
I'm, you know, you deal with it daily.
I know, I do. I teach them. I mean, I know it's a small group and it is very transient, but I do think that to really
I think it's
do
an
a
important
service by
population that
people,
we
that
need
we should focus them too.
I mean, we're focusing on it anyway, regardless of whether it's in the strategic plan or not, but.
I think it's important to call out that if I have.
Yeah.
And
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can have the same expectations as far as the increase though.
That's pretty hard, but
But it'd be more of a target for attendance versus if we can kind of get them here, then we can really focus on how
Well, maybe
to.
because it's hard
jump
to,
Yeah,
it is
maybe.
really, that's one of the biggest challenges, right? Is if they're not sitting in your classroom, especially in a language acquisition phase, like how are you helping them acquire language to
Be able to
do
do
any of these
the
things
other
that they
things.
need to do if they are absent 36%, if 36% of them
What
are
if
gone
we-
more than 90.
So what if we add a SMART goal for that specifically targets attendance?
I can get down with that one.
So we can add our English learners with a more modest goal for improvement, but then have something that targets attendance and we can see what we can do to be more supportive.
I think what, Ms. Elder is getting at is that we shouldn't not call out
Correct.
the subgroup.
Correct.
And so then my question would be maybe, and just suggestion, that the goal statement is multi-year, not 1 year.
Yeah.
And then it gives you time to get the attendance moving. And then in 2 years, like, it just gives you more time.
And
But
could-
noting
If
that
you
if
do
that
also
is
get
what you're gonna
brand new-
do,
Yeah.
by the time you look at that metric, 2/3 of the kids that you're talking about aren't even here.
I mean, I think
And
we
you
can,
could overlap you could overlap the data when you show the changes. You can also say like, this is why, we did support, and recognize that different populations need different levels of support and we're tracking them and pushing in. We saw that the attendance for these groups were not the same. That may be a reason for not the same increase. When you're presenting the data on the back end, because that's pretty much what you did. It's just on different slides.
So I'm looking at, because I wanted to pull back up the ELA data for EL learners increased. It went from 8.3% to 15.8%, which is
Still
why.
lagging the district.
district.
whole-
No,
Oh,
district is
weren't?
8.9.
Okay.
The district presented they have over the last couple years presented larger gains in EL. From what I've heard at the board meetings is they were using a different intervention. They were not using the HMH product. They were using a different product
They
to
do.
support an intervention.
They do.
So, and that's what some were
In
questioning.
those ESOL protected classes, they don't use HMH. They didn't use Read 180.
Right, that was that whole
Right,
HMH thing. It was,
They use Elevation.
and it was, some years it was like double point when they would.
I mean, for us, we went up 7.5%.
It was they called it out again last night.
So not to say that 15.8% is good at all, right?
Right, I know.
Not acting as though that is a thing, but it is higher than the district, higher than we were last year or the year before. But that's why I was saying math is
More.
more need,
So-
even though all of our subgroups need some love.
So maybe we can add EL, and I'm okay doing it year over year. I mean, just with us having the understanding that it's gonna be modest, right? Like it may not be.
I would say it's a lot harder, I don't know, but like to measure some of these increases that same way, because you're also dealing with a language, a complete language barrier. Like, you know, when you take write score, if you write it in another language, you get a 0. So.
Well, if you were to write it on the milestones, you're getting a 0 too.
Exactly, what I
I mean,
mean
because
is
the
it
way
gets,
that the state looks at, and this is gonna speak to a larger issue, and I don't wanna get on that soapbox, in my opinion, on that. The way that we look at, and it is state to state, how you choose to look at the EL learner. Whether or not is you do everything in English and you test them in English and ignore their native language, or in some states, they will acknowledge their native language and you can take the test in that language. So it is state to state dependent, and no federal regulations around it specifically in that way.
right.
And it does present a challenge, especially if the child is new to the country and did not come from an English speaking country.
Takesha, what was the percentage increase from, it was like 8% to 15. So should we base it off of that, like base our goal off of whatever math that is increase and hope we do a little better following maybe?
Oh, 7% is a lot.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a function
I was
of those
thinking
numbers,
like 2 or
right?
3.
So,
Yeah. But I mean, because you guys did it this past year from 7 to 15.
Mhm.
I mean, not that we need to go that high, but it's possible to.
Oh, I'm not
have an
saying
increase,
anything's
yeah.
possible. I really believe that. I mean,
Because I get what they're saying. We don't want to leave that subcategory out.
right. And I agree with
And
that.
you guys are able to do a big percentage, but so if we just start somewhere that you think is attainable,
Ms. Nolan, what do you think would be a reasonable gain year over year? I gotta pin you down.
I don't know. I mean, I think that jump is wonderful and might be more of
And
an
needed,
anomaly and
right?
needed.
Right,
and-
And I also think 15% is like not okay in ELA, as I speak to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I truly, I mean, you're dealing in many cases with students who speak no English. I mean, none.
Right.
And then, and if they stay and they're here, you can progress those students. And if they are not here, or if they leave the school and then you get a new student in their place, I think it's very difficult to pin down what that data goal would be. That is my honest assessment, to working directly with that population.
So can we maybe think about this goal?
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
and
I mean,
maybe
we
look
can-
at
we can
other
say that we're
schools
gonna
and
add
see,
it.
Right?
In both ELA and math. We can say we'll add it.
So
And then
to
we think
your
about what
point,
percentage.
in ELA in 2022 was 13.3. And this is on the website in the data that I gave last month. But then in 2023, it dropped to 8.3. And then last year it rose to 15.8. I do not believe, from what I can see, that it's just like a consistent trend up
Right.
for the reasons that Ms. Nolan listed. But I do think there's more intentionality, because if you recall, we brought the data for EL learners, which means that the school has been talking about this data. This was not an ask from the GO team for us to look at this subgroup. And so because we noticed that this is an issue for this subgroup, you know, that is what called it out this year.
And thank you for that. So we'll think about that and come back to it. I'm gonna have to hurry us up because we gotta move through the agenda. But we talked about attendance being another SMART goal. Is that something we want to at least start to consider and maybe put some framework around it at our next meeting?
So just because I'm trying to capture this, are we, we did say math goal increase for, we're gonna keep the subgroups that we have
Correct.
and add
Yeah.
Yes,
and we're gonna do the same for ELA.
correct. And then for the subgroups that we had 5% goal as opposed to the 3% goal.
So we weren't measuring apples to apples. Those were 2-year goals versus 1-year
Gotcha.
goals. And you looking at MAP versus milestones. So I just wanted to put it, you can do whichever way you want, but I just wanted to point out,
Yeah, I
you're
think,
looking at different assessments.
can we do, but we can do year over year if we want to.
By the time we meet again, yes. Will you have, we would never be able to talk about milestones data in May.
Yeah, but we said map,
But-
I thought we moved everything over to map.
We did, but what's on the
Ah,
strategic plan is still in
milestones.
ELG terms. And so I was saying,
Gotcha.
depending on how you want to look, if you're looking year over year, August to August, then yes, in most cases, we would be able to give you August to August data. If you want August to May data, then that's going to be a hard no. We're never going to be able to give you ELG
Gotcha.
data in May.
Okay, so we might need to think about our data source as well.
It's gotta be mapped if we're looking at this 1 year.
I mean, I guess we don't
Volta.
have to use 1 year, but I think it helps keep us focused to keep moving. Like if we see we're not meeting the goal, uh-oh, we need to do something different.
But if you guys are gonna use map on SIP, then we don't have to, then we can use milestone. And the
We
Go
can.
team, the Go team is
I mean, we're going to
living,
look
it's
at
just
all
right.
of it, right?
So they're gonna, right,
Yeah.
so why don't we keep one milestone, strategic plan, and then one, if you guys are gonna keep SIP map, we're gonna look at both.
We have to look at both.
Right,
Anyway, the
Does that sound
state
good?
is only looking at ELGs,
Right.
so we're still gonna have to pay attention to ELGs,
That
so
sounds-
that's fine.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
unless anybody thinks of another reason why.
So I'm gonna take that last bullet off.
I have no idea if that's your thought around that. Does that make sense? Does it
No,
not make
I
sense?
said it's fine, because we're gonna look at it
Okay.
anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
We look at both. So
And
now
milestones we
we
can look
just
at
need
state.
to argue on the percentage. I think
yeah,
3 was what was lifted. Am I wrong?
yeah, 3
Yeah,
was
three's right
there.
now.
Do you wanna
And
keep
if-
the increase
So
at
if we're
3?
doing 2 years though,
Well, SMART, that was the SIP SMART goal, right? Was 5%
The
over 2
SIP,
years.
we were told we had to do until 2025 because the district has to update its strategic plan after 2025. And so I don't know that ours could span beyond 2025. I think right now we pretty much should probably operate, Diane, under a year span versus going to 2026.
okay.
I would probably recommend that. I mean, the other thing to remember is strategic plans are living documents.
So we can change it
you
next
put
fall.
Something in until 2026, when the district does its new strategic plan, and you guys are building your new one, you can always, you're probably not going to be starting from ground zero. You're going to look at what you had and keep it moving, so.
It is 5:55.
So are we gonna
Let's go.
keep it at 3% for 1 year?
3%.
Yeah.
And then I will draft these,
Attendance one.
And we're gonna do an attendance one and we'll.
so we're gonna delete the BAS and add
the
attendance.
Yes, ma'am.
The STEAM one. There's,
I don't even know where we're gonna be this
That's-
time next year.
that's what so there's lots of conversation regarding signature programs. So what would you do you want to track what we do this year? Because that would be.
We're already doing that anyway. We meet weekly to talk about how we're doing in STEAM.
would you like to present out? Because I know they're, earned autonomy.
Today?
No, not today, another
Gotcha.
time. That would be great. And so if we keep,
So we're gonna add that to the agenda for next month.
I would propose that. I'm looking forward to earned autonomy, and I know you guys are working a lot on that scheme.
We are, and not just looking at it from overall, but looking at like how we're doing things to focus on increasing females in STEAM as well. So,
And then the stakeholder engagement, I think that's a great goal too, especially given that people like to engage. And one of the goals in guardrails is engagement. And they said that one, those are not, the guardrails are not being adjusted. The goals maybe, but not the guardrails. As of a couple weeks ago.
I understand. We're in a fluid area. So at the next, I just wanted to make sure I'm gonna invite my STEAM coach to do the updates for what we've done since
think
he's
that's
been
great.
here for STEAM.
I think that's great. And then that was new to our cluster 2 years ago, because we had to change.
We were college and career.
Right. Okay,
Uh-huh.
next. Do you
What
want-
did we say in the attendance goal? Are we just looking at attended subgroup goals? I'm sorry, just trying to
Yes.
end the conversation. Subgroups only?
Yeah.
There is a trend at the higher school that there is a higher absenteeism with also higher functioning students not coming to school. Should we look at just attendance overall at the school?
might be
Because
smart for
I
us to
think
look
we
at
should
attendance
look at it
overall.
all and then break it out by subgroups. Is there a reason why we have to look at only subgroups for attendance?
So we ended the year at 86. Wait, are we looking at, well, first we need to decide if we're looking at average daily attendance, which is ADA, or are we looking at the way that attendance is done for CCRPI, which you have to be here 90% of the time in order for you to count positively towards school. The reason why I say that is two different numbers. ADA, we're at 90 something percent. That was in our principals report, but we can skip to this right now. We were last year at 94.6%. We're currently at 95.7%. So increase to what? You see what I'm saying? Versus CCRPI, last year we were at 86.6%. Right now we're at 88.9. This was full today. So I feel like it might be easier to do the subgroups and to do overall
That's
when
true.
you're getting past 85.
Right.
We just need to get kids to school.
I think we all can agree to that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure when we adjust this and
It'll be
bring
for
it
the
back,
subgroup.
it'll be, yeah,
All right,
we're done.
okay. And that included the
Wait.
data discussion.
Mhm.
Sorry, just on the last thing on the SMART goals. So the other thing we just have to do is the monthly, the stakeholders being engaged in school communications, that was only last year. So we just need to update
Add the,
that one too.
update the date. Because we do meet monthly, multiple ways.
Multiple times, right? Yeah.
Update parent engagement. dates.
I think it just says engage. I think that incorporating the teachers in there, just engage students, teachers, like, I think engage is great. It doesn't necessarily need to be parent. Does it say
No,
parent?
that was-
Stakeholders? It says
Stakeholders.
That
stakeholders.
is
will be
just so I
engaged.
can
Oh,
know
so
which
you
one
know,
I'm
okay.
doing. Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure it was.
I'm not gonna change the wording. We're just changing the date.
Okay, I just read that, so.
All right. And we basically covered discussion item 2, discussion item 3, community engagement. We can, if everybody's okay with this, table it till next meeting. The family engagement, something else team is going to come and visit with us.
I did bring some stuff from them that will be here to visit with us, but, and this can kind of get your juices going of what to engage with them about.
Juices.
Yeah. So just, it specifies, or it's a guide, a school guide to, and it does have PTO, Go Team, and all that on here. Like how engagement can be done. And so that can at least give everybody a framework so that when we get ready, we're not just starting from scratch in that space. And I also have the felt overview, and I will go ahead and let you all know, we have not had a family engagement leadership team meeting this year. We're probably moving more so looking at doing it a couple times a year versus every month. And of course, when we make that shift, I'm really trying to wait for how we discuss things here as to how we move with that, because in the past years, we had a representative from Go Team, a representative from PTO, and a representative from Foundation to sit on that. And all those people are no longer in those spaces. So once we listen to how we want to move forward, and we do not have to do it in this way, so I'm giving you all the information. You all can discuss to your heart's delight at the next meeting. But that also gives us, if we are gonna do it the same way, who do you all want to be on there from Go Team?
And some schools just have a steering committee with those members, right? That means with the principal, it's not like a sanctioned felt committee, it's just someone.
Yes, but I get all the emails. Everybody already talks.
Yeah, so I think this was kind of meant to help with, we have some concerns around engagement in math across levels. And I want to make sure it's clear, because I got some concerns that people thought that we thought math was just great and there was no work to do there. I don't think that's what we came up with. I think we came up with our accelerated children are doing great, but we have some subgroups that need some additional love and attention. And so I'm hoping to be able to engage our entire community. And maybe they do this, so I'm hoping they'll have some ideas that they can share with us.
And to your question
We've had
earlier,
this for 2 years, and this really
Right.
hasn't looked like what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna challenge us beyond this, because we've had this for 2 years, and they did not follow what the handbook says it should even do.
Okay.
So
that person's coming to be able to argue that, because she says that we have the ability to kind of make it what we need it to be,
Okay.
and it should have an instructional focus. I do think that shifted. I feel last year it shifted to say it should be more instructionally focused. In prior years, it was more about, are we translating information? Are we doing, the feel goods? So I think that person will be able to speak more to it, but I wanted to give it to you all so everyone is abreast of the things, so that when the person comes, we can have conversations. I will say that Ms. Hollis would push back to say that I have a steering committee where only one person from Go Team, one person from PTO, and one person from Foundations gets access to talk to me about all the things only, because I feel like it has the tendency of creating issues because everybody may not be represented in those spaces.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll table discussion item 3, we have this information. And let's just be thoughtful about it, because we'll have them here and we can ask them all the questions and try to shape ours the way we do it. And then the next thing we had was principal's report.
Oh, that's quick. Okay. Six slides. And to that point, just thinking out loud, I wasn't gonna give this out, but I was just thinking about what you were saying. This was given out, as you can see the date adjusted on the bottom, as a guide for that felt team, and it has
Yeah, those,
literacy and numeracy goals. That was not something that was given to us last year. All right, and I'm going to be really quick because we talked about this last week, and last month, but they said we had to talk about it again. I am still waiting for the vape detectors quote. We have ordered the two-way radios, so that should be coming soon. I have gotten a company to come out to do the window coverings on the ground floor down below us in the courtyard, so you can't see into the classrooms. And I have not gotten that quote back yet. They've measured last week and looking at like vinyl covering where you can see out, but people can't see in as well. Just because if we were to go on a lockdown, just like all these windows are right here, that's what it looks like on the first floor, this windows. So that's what we're trying to do. And my concern is with blinds, they're used to being open. So the blinds are gonna look like that. And then if anything were to happen,
You gotta run over
you
there.
gotta run over there and pull them down, and that's counterproductive. So that was my answer around blinds. And then once we get the quotes for those pieces, then we'll see how much of the 45 is left to do increase exterior cameras or lighting. I do think that lighting is the issue as a lacrosse parent. I'm sure you can agree that exterior lighting is the issue when we go to night starting earlier in a couple months. But it costs. I have asked facilities around that with the field and no lights being out there. I didn't really get much traction. But once we see how much money is left, we can see if we can do any additional or if there's a need for additional exterior cameras. We do not think if we need an interior, maybe one, maybe two, but not many. But the cameras cost. So once we see where we stand with the remaining of the 45, then we'll reevaluate to see if that's something that we can do this year or if we need to wait. Since, from my understanding, the 45 is able. And remember, if you go look at the state, it says 47. 2,000 is kept aside to update and manage the AEDs, defibrillators, to make sure that they're
Up to date.
yes, because we do not want that to be an issue. Again, if you notice, our enrollment is up to 1,090. I have a lot of comments on that. Let me keep them to myself.
Because
What were we at
Yeah,
last?
what were we
Last
at the cutoff
time.
date?
79, I think, was the last number I wrote down.
1079, there you go.
So you don't
We're
get
up to
any
1090. We do
additional
not.
funding?
Well, we were funded at 1082. So we don't get any additional funds for anyone else.
Yep.
So we're at 1090.
Makes sense. Yeah, not at all.
And we talked about the attendance. Discipline. Remember that the 23-24 is end of year data. So this is where we're trending thus far this year. This is pulled today.
And we're a fourth of the way, a little more than a fourth of the way through the school year? How
We're
far?
almost a fourth of the way.
Almost a fourth. of
So,
This is
Oh,
a,
but you started Monday, right?
is there a, like a
Yeah, we are
result
a little
of,
bit over a fourth of the way. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go
Is
ahead.
there a list of like outcomes based on 1, 2 to 3 or 4 incidents? Like,
Mhm.
is it on the website?
Yeah. Outcomes,
Resolutions.
Resolutions, right? I was just wondering if it was like a formula, like a set,
No, this is, I mean,
they're all case by case.
they are definitely all case by case and, yeah.
An incident we defined as something that
Anything
resulted
that
in
is, that
school
is.
or out of school suspension.
No,
No,
just
An incident is anything that is a violation of the student code of conduct.
that's what I thought.
And so some of these, to your point, resolutions might be conference with the counselor, refer to social worker, like all the incidents does not mean out of school suspension. All right.
Sixth grade is bad.
I know, I was like, is there a reason? we think-
We did have conversations about that, yes, admin team and as faculty. What do I feel comfortable saying? I feel that, or we feel that some of it is not holding fifth graders accountable for code of
That's what we're gonna
conduct.
say. Is elementary not doing their part?
Yes,
Okay.
and they're being more lenient, and then they get here, we're like,
Don't do
this
that.
is the code of conduct, because when you think about it, you're talking about, 400 kids
Right.
might be the whole school population,
Yeah.
and now 400 kids is
It's a
the
grade
grade
level.
level.
Right.
And so your horse playing turned serious is an issue.
Right.
It's just, so that's what we've determined that,
Sixth grade has to.
sixth grade
Shut
is
everybody
a
down.
little.
So you
tougher
guys
than
have
the
done
movement.
a couple town halls on expected behavior.
Yes.
I know my sixth grader has told me, because I've
Mhm.
asked her, because people
Mhm.
have suggested that. Are you increasing that kind of feedback to the sixth graders to let them know?
They're also doing quizzes in advisory now around the code of conduct. We did not do that last year. So,
It's in
yeah.
third grade.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. No, that's great.
Yeah. So it's almost
Study
something
group.
that
Study
introduced in the
group.
elementary school,
Okay.
like in
It's
fifth
that.
grade, that second semester.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And this is just our outreach, because as you may or may not know, and I'll be quiet because you got to do CAT meeting stuff. The budget is tight for the upcoming school year. So we need to recruit all the kids that's gonna come on in on day one, not on day 60. So we can
Right.
get the money and funding to be able to retain staff. And I'm not sure what the funding formula is gonna be like for what we're gonna be discussing, in January. I have no earthly idea. But these are when I'll be going to the elementary schools to start those conversations. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the CAT meeting, the first one was mostly an organizational meeting. Chair is Tamara Jones, vice chair is Melissa Clark. She has one at all three levels. And Lindley Terrace is the secretary. There is also an engagement committee that will do engagement for the cluster and based on feedback for the cluster. So the cluster has expressed interest in safety, data as a whole cluster. So just some ideas talking about. Principal Brinksled is on that committee, myself, Lindley, and then there will be other people asked. I believe they were looking for someone from each school. The next meeting is November 14th. The framework is a little bit different. We used to meet just as clusters. Now it is going to be the entire district. CAT members are meeting, and then we do a very quick breakout room, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, which is how that framework goes. This is the first year that they're doing that. Anybody and everybody can attend. It's kind of like Go Team Go. You have to be a CAT member to participate in the conversations, but it is flexible. Three things that have been talked about a lot is signature programs, class sizes, and earned flexibility and autonomy through as Principal Hollis is doing, like reporting out. So those are three things that I'm hearing a lot across the district. And so I appreciate the information that you're providing us to help our school with that.
What are the discussions on class sizes?
They're just looking at the budget overall.
It's time for us to do facilities planning. Every time you come up to a strategic plan, it's also time for facilities planning. So they're like 5-year increments, and we're just expiring. In order to do that, we have to talk about what the capacity is for each building. And I feel like there was a meeting last night or 2 nights
The
ago.
board presented the very first, for anybody and everybody interested, presented last night the first part of the facilities conversation for potentially consolidating schools, potentially how class sizes, zoning, and if we keep the budget as it is for next year, they're saying it will be a $100 million deficit, right? So that's where they're talking about what a class size would look like, what do small schools look like, what do larger schools look like. So there's a lot of conversations going on, so pay.
And to that point, before any major decision is made, they'll do a drive-by at each cluster to talk about the facilities planning for the cluster. And those are open to the public as well.
Yep.
All right. It is 6:17. I will take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Muchas gracias. Good people. I appreciate your service and your